How come we have 2 days this week with no baseball? It feels like it's cruel and unusual punishment, which, as you know, is banned by our Constitution. We're going to get into the Twins Guardian series. We're going to talk minor league numbers and say some goodbyes to some players that were let go on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for first deposit match up to $100. With Justin still without power, this is my co-host, Vanilla Bean. She will be joining me for about 5 seconds here before she takes off in the long tradition of cat co-hosts of this show. For those who don't know me, I've been here since the start of the network. My name is Jeff Ellis. I've been the host of Locked On Guardian since at the inception. One of the first people brought in as a baseball talking head for Locked On. For that, I was a national writer at Scoutin' 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. Before that, I was your second favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has and will exist. In terms of yesterday's number, it was 5 because if you're following my Twitter, I talked about how the Guardians have been really successful in the 5th round. Recent 5th rounders of late are Stephen Kwan, Hunter Gaddis, and Tanner Bybee. That's right, 3 central pieces of this team. So Aiden Major isn't going to pitch for a while because he needed surgery. Justin, after watching him, really likes Major, but Major might be a player to watch because that 5th round has been paying dividends for Cleveland. For those who don't know, that's the fun game. Every day, we change what my number is, and then you have to guess the why of it. I want to thank you all who are joining us, all the diehards, all the everydayers out there. Appreciating you coming in, having some fun when it has not been a fun week between us not having games that are occurring and then the Guardians' overall performance has, I just want to reiterate again. Yeah, 5-game winning, or I wish 5-game winning streak, 5-game losing streak, no good. But there are reasons, and this is not going to be the doom and gloom. I stay even keel. You might not like it when I don't, get too positive. Where I'm not, when I don't buy that Stephen Kwan's going to hit 400. But I also am not going to be the guy who's like, this is already over. Shout out to everydayer Steven Sandquist, who told us the league average BABIP is actually down this year to 290. That still means Cleveland is 27 points below the league average BABIP. So again, very unlucky since July 1st. And if a few of those hits drop in like they should, they might have won 2 of those last 5, which, while not great, instead of a 3.5-game lead, they'd have a 4.5-game lead. Every little bit helps, right? And the fact they've maintained this lead, I had some people talking about, the lead was huge a few weeks ago. Twins are playing really good baseball. We're going to get into it. Let's, without further ado, let's start talking. Since July 1st, the Twins, let's just talk offensively. They have the 5th best WRC plus in baseball. For those who don't know, that takes all of your offensive stats, puts them in a pot, boils them together, spits out a number, 100 being average. And actually, the top 22 teams are all 100 or better. Bringing down that average a lot is the White Sox at a 64. Cleveland is 4th after yesterday's at a 90. They're still there at a 90. With Texas, Atlanta, and Houston and Pittsburgh all right ahead of them, who are all teams trying to compete for the playoffs. Below them, not competitive teams. And Cleveland's BABIP is actually down to 259. It's even lower than it was. So we're talking, again, about a team that's, 31 points below where they should be for a team batting average of balls put in play. The other side of it, the Twins have the 6th highest BABIP in that time. They're about 15 over. If you're curious, Boston, Milwaukee, Miami, and Washington Nationals have been the luckiest teams in baseball in terms of contact. But yeah, you're talking about one team being 15 points above league average, the other team being 31. That is quite a good luck split. The Twins are really strong offense. We're going to compare these two teams positionally, but I just had to go back and reiterate. You can hear me talk about more, explain the BABIP of it all on yesterday's show and explaining, yeah, they haven't been good, but they've also been unlucky in a nutshell. Moving on from that, yesterday I kind of was not sure about the Twins bullpen. Well, since July 1st, they have the 9th best FIP in baseball as a bullpen. Cleveland has the 8th best FIP. They are pens that are surprisingly close. Now, In terms of WAR, Cleveland is 5, Minnesota is 7. It's things like that where you kind of can see. Now, the one thing Minnesota's pen, is a little bit further down on is their walk rate is a little bit higher. Their home run rate is a little bit lower. Cleveland's, by the way, is also, both of those are really good. And just in terms of K rate, we know a lot of your bullpen is about striking guys out. That's success. 13th and 14th since July 1st. So these pens have been comparable. Part of that is that, guys in Cleveland's pen, they weren't going to stay at a Hall of Fame level forever. The Twins pen, I don't know. I still look at the individual performers in there, and I'm kind of mystified how they are where they are. There's a lot of guys who have not pitched particularly well for them this year. So it's interesting that they're doing that well as a bullpen without really diving into all of the numbers. Let me actually close this and just focus here on the bullpen data of it all. And then kind of another big stack category is left on base. Cleveland is 14th in that. Minnesota is 58%. So that is an interesting thing, that in spite of all of their things, they're not stranding a lot of guys, which might be, part of their issue with some of their performances. It's not a bullpen that is stranding a lot of players. I still think the trick is to get into their bullpen. The starting pitching has been pretty solid. If you look at the overall pitching numbers since July 1st, they have the 3rd best FIP in baseball. Again, starting pitching has been pretty good for the Twins. Cleveland is overall 14th, which for everyone who wants to tell me that, the other common thing is that they have the worst rotation in baseball. Listen, I'm willing to say amongst contenders, but I feel like if you're telling me Cleveland has the worst rotation in baseball, that's just the sign you're not quite paying attention. Just in terms of generated value, Cleveland's at a 0.8. Miami has a negative WAR. Cleveland has the same WAR with starters as the Dodgers since July 1st. It's not great. It's second worst in baseball. But if you're telling me Cleveland has the worst in baseball, I know you're not paying attention because Miami is so bad. In terms of starters, Minnesota is tied for second with San Diego and Arizona. By the way, Arizona, highest runs created plus since July 1st, on top of having the second best starting rotation since July 1st. So that Arizona series stunk. Getting swept is never fun. People are like, they were looking past Arizona. I don't think they looked past Arizona. They were in every one of those games. Arizona is really flipping good. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Arizona is going to be a dangerous playoff team. They started slow. Things are coming together for them. They had some big injuries and inconsistencies. That Arizona team took care of business in Cleveland. They're one of the best teams in baseball. They're probably the best team that no one is talking about as a World Series contender, which is a little bit crazy when you're like, they were in the World Series last year. That team has been on fire since July 1st. And people are going to say I'm making excuses for Cleveland, and that's fine. Maybe I am. Maybe I want to see. But I think it is also fair to sit back and be like, Arizona's really good. Now, you should always be able to get one game. But like that Arizona team, I can't fault them for having a rough series against a team with the second best starting rotation and the best offense over the last month and a half. So, yeah, for these two teams, like Cleveland's bullpen, I'll be the first to admit, it's better than I have in my head it being. I still think you want to get past that rotation, though, because that rotation is strong. Cleveland's rotation is not. We officially know Alex Cobb's going to start game 2. We know that Gavin Williams is Saturday. We know the plan is for Sunday, Tanner to pitch. We'll have to see how the rest of it's going to play out. We don't have any officialities right now that have come either via, emails that I get from the team about who's going to do what, or, general talk. But we kind of know, the general layout of how things are going to go very quickly. We don't have a ton of time here. I used to do this thing when I had a solo show, because when you do a solo show, you got to do a lot more talking where you'd compare the teams. We'd go position by position and just compare the teams. And I did this every single series. I'm just going to do it for this one here. So if you look at these two teams, you start a catcher where Ryan Jeffers versus Bo Naylor. Now, Bo Naylor has offensive data that is positive, and Ryan Jeffers, his data is strong offensively. He's an offensive first catcher. He has a negative defensive value on Fangraphs. I don't know how I feel about Fangraphs' defensive value. Bo Naylor has a massive, he has, I believe, the highest defensive value on the Guardians. Yeah. So it's closer than one would think, just because Bo Naylor has been a really strong defender. But I think you have to give the advantage to the Twins because like a nearly 30-point difference in their weighted runs created plus and their production. Moving to first base, one would think slam dunk for Cleveland, but it's closer than you think. It's kind of a reverse of the catcher position where Josh Naylor's defensive value this year has been pretty poor. On the other side of things, Carlos Santana continues to be a plus defender. What a career for that guy. I mean, he is, let's see, 38 years of age. He was a borderline all-star. Before everyone got hot in Minnesota, one could make a case in early June. He was their best hitter through that point in the year. He still got a 113 weighted runs created plus. He does all the little things. Naylor's been better this year. He's had some higher highs and some lower lows. He's not as good of a defender, but that's advantage Cleveland. So we got a split. Move to second base. Brooksley is hitting about as well as Andres Jimenez. But Jimenez is a much better defender. So advantage Cleveland. Just because Brooksley, development isn't a straight line. I believe in Brooksley. I was a big fan of his. That was a great pick by the Twins. But hey, for a lot of guys, first time up doesn't always click. You move over to third base. Royce Lewis has been unbelievable when healthy, but it's Jose. Advantage Cleveland. And I know I just skipped shortstop, which is maybe that's just a mental block. Shortstop is becoming a trauma zone for me on this team. You got Brian Arocchio with good defensive metrics, but a bat that, he's shown some more signs of life, let's be honest. The other side of things, the Twins with Correa hurt, it's a lot of Willie Castro, former Guardians prospect, Willie Castro. And he was an all-star this year, switch hitter. He's hitting the ball really well. That's advantage Twins. So now we get out of the infield with it essentially being tied, right? So first base and catcher cancel out. Second base and shortstop cancel out. Sorry, Cleveland's up 1 because of third base. When you move to left field, Trevor Larnach, Austin Martin have been the primary guys over the past week or so. Larnach's having a good year. I liked him coming out of Oregon, not Oregon State. No, was he Oregon State? He might have been Oregon State. He might be another one of those. Yeah, he's Oregon State, I want to say. But either way, he's played well. So we got a pair of Beavers in the outfield, right? Isn't that what Oregon State is? I'm going to get myself in trouble. But it's Quan. Like, Larnach's a bad defender. Quan has a better offensive production, better defensive production, better base running. Cleveland's up 2. Center field, Byron Buxton. When that dude's on the field, he's special. Just unfortunately for Twins fans, he's not on the field. Ty Freeman, Austin. There's an Austin. Austin Hedges, center fielder. Let's see that. Things get out of hand. That'll be fun. Angel Martinez. I think it's pretty clear advantage Twins. And right field is interesting. Lane Thomas versus Max Kepler. Max Kepler has a 103 weighted runs created plus. Lane Thomas has a 100. Both are, Thomas is a righty. Kepler is a lefty. This year, Kepler has better defensive value, but I think it's a push. I'm going to push these two. Twins fans might say that it shouldn't be, but I don't think it's one guy being that exceptionally better than the other. It kind of depends on the pitcher on the mound. We know Kepler turns into Superman in Cleveland, so maybe that will be benefit Twins. And then the other side of it is DH, Matt Wallner versus David Fry. That's an easy advantage to the Twins. So we got, with the push, a push in this series. Even though the Twins offense is better, when you go through position by position, and due to the Twins injuries, honestly, I think Cleveland should be in it for this entire series. I think a split is what you're going for. A split is what I expect. And I'm going to keep staying positive. We got to come back, and I want to kind of have some fun with who's leading the minor leagues and stuff. We spent so much time on the draft and the trade deadline. I think it's interesting to see some of the names that maybe you don't expect. The guys who we don't always talk about who are exciting this year for the Cleveland Guardians. Whew, it's a hot one out there. I'm always warm. I am one of those people that is constantly warm and constantly hot. Currently drinking my coffee. I have in my cup here. As soon as I get the liquid IV, I will be diving in. I love the range of flavors. There's so many good flavors. When they were like, hey, which one do you want? I'm like, can I get them all? What are you willing to send me? Because I will sit back and try all of yours. I love the fact that one of their flavors, and this is the one I haven't tried it yet, but I love all parts of this, is the popsicle firecracker. Maybe they can't say bomb pop. I'm going to say it's a bomb pop inspired, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. I want that right now. Put that in me. How about from acai berry and lemon lime to pina colada? These are fun flavors. And on top of that, they're going to keep you hydrated. It's a science-backed way to hydrate better. They are out there using the science. Tear, pour, live more. One stick of 16-ounce water hydrates of one stick plus 16 ounces of water. It's going to give you maximum hydration. So no more thirsty summer when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using our code MLB at liquidiv.com. Passion, drive, patience. The formula. Oh, sorry. Trying to do too many things at once. I apologize, eBay Motors. I'm going to start you over. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championship is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I want to remind you to go check out, do a second listen with Sully on the Locked On MLB podcast. One of the best dudes in the business. One of my favorite people in the network. So let's talk minor league performances. I've got a few. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Matt Boyd yesterday faced the minimum over 6 frames. 6 frames, 63 pitches, 1 hit, 7 Ks. Faced the minimum. Must have had a double play in there with the 1 hit. Phenomenal performance. Very positive sign. Hopefully we'll see more of that. Kyle Manzardo had 2 for 4 with a double, chased a lotter. If he can stay healthy, he had a home run in that one. And Austin Peterson continues to deal with 5 innings, 1 earned run. A lot of this now brings me back to, let's just talk about some minor league numbers this year. Let me close some tabs. As any longtime listeners know, I love to close tabs. I get anxious when I got a bunch of tabs open. And we're talking about some cuts in the second half. I've got way too many tabs open. I also want to mention, I saw that, was it Tyrese Turner was their player of the week. He has tied for the highest on-base percentage for Cleveland in the minors over the last week with Gabby Arias, as we all expect. If you're not paying attention, side note, I mentioned it yesterday, Gabby Arias is doing phenomenal since he's been sent down. This is very reminiscent to me of what happened with the Yankees and Esteban Florial. So, you never know. There might be still ways. Though at the time, Florial was completely off the 40-man, so it's a little bit different. And then Melquis Hernandez was the pitcher, 6-foot lefty, not a guy I was super familiar with. This is his first year pitching, outside the Dominican Summer League. And he's been at the Lynchburg and with in the ACL. And, you look at the overall data, hits per 9 are a little high, but you got to like a guy who's his ERA is low. I just wish he didn't walk more guys than he struck out. But I figured if I was going to talk about one player, I should talk about both. But yeah, now getting into some stats. So I was kind of curious, just kind of looking through. They send us these updated stats. It's interesting to see the guys maybe you expect and don't expect to see. Like, I don't know if I necessarily expected. That's interesting. I'm sorry I got thrown off. I'm assuming it's Cooper Engel in Lake County who leads the minor leagues for Cleveland in on-base percentage. I say that because the list has J, Engel, and all I can think is Joe Engel, but that was Joe Englet anyways. It's not surprising to see guys like Kefis and Churio on there. But Tommy Hawk, Jonah Evan-Kula being the top 10, Mac Collado, those are not guys we've talked about as much this year. So it's kind of interesting to see because we know on-base is it brings some value as a stat. Everyone tells me all the time that Kyle Manzardo doesn't hit for power. He's tied for 4th with Juan Brito and CJ Kefis. I know he recently had a cold spell, but still, just as I continue to go through, I did not expect to see Petey Halpin in the top 10 of slugging. I know everydayer Nunzio, I almost said Nico, Nunzio will be excited to hear that. I don't think you can say you're converting me to Halpin, but good for him. Khalil Watson, by the way, is tied for 7th in home runs. I don't know how that's going to work. The overall traits are still interesting and fun with him. A guy who's, near the top, highest batting average, most hits, most doubles, and not top 10 in home runs, but might be in another year. Angel Janau is a guy that he's got 30 doubles already this year, 123 hits. He's hitting 333 across 2 levels. We've been very focused, understandably on like CJ Capus, who's 2nd in the minors in batting average and who's done a lot of fantastic work this year. He's, as mentioned, he's tied for 4th in home runs. But Janau is a guy who 2 years ago we're all very high on. And then he kind of struggled and, he got moved down. And it's nice to see him having this good bounce back. 3rd best OPS in the entire system. It goes Capus, Engel, Janau, then J-Rod, then Tana, then Brito, Churio. Ralphie is down here at 9th. But yeah, it's, there are a lot of, it's, by the way, Miles Straw, 7th in the minors in hits. Like, there's some weird ones. Actually, the most extra base hits in the minors, it's a tie with Brito and Janau. Again, there's a lot of stuff that shows Janau. He leads the team in total bases. He performed at an exceptionally high level. And then I think stolen bases are kind of always a fun one to look at with Churio at 1. Gonzalez, he's not as much of a prospect than Mooney, Hawk, Guy Lincecum, Jonah Evankula, and there's Janau again. So it's like going through the numbers. I did this a year ago. I was like, I probably need to give Jonathan Ramirez more credit when you just kind of look at the rankings, not the rankings, but how guys stack up, who are performing. Janau's that guy this year. Janau's the guy who you go through and you look at the hitting numbers like, okay, that name is everywhere. Pitching side of things, it's a lot of Peterson and it's a lot of Tugboat, Wilkinson. Most strikeouts, that's a Tugboat by a pretty good margin, but then it's Messick, Peterson, and Webb, who we've talked about a lot on this show. And then the only guy over 100 after them was Aaron Davenport. Clemmy was 6th. He would have gotten there. But yeah, it's kind of that core group of arms at the higher levels that's interesting. Magnus Ellerts leads the minors in saves. He's maybe the best relief prospect we don't talk about all that often. Definitely someone to keep your eyes on. I believe he's in Akron now. And then I was going to see if there's anything else. Like, it's interesting to see lowest average against, because that means guys are often struggling to pick up what they're doing. And again, Tugboat, but he's been everywhere. Ninkasi, maybe I'm too low on Ninkasi. I'll be willing to take that. He's there. Then Peterson, Trent Denholm. He might be a plus version Eli Morgan. I would just like to see him get converted to the pen. And you also have Messick on that list, Aaron Davenport. There's some players that stand out. And whip isn't great for evaluation, but it's interesting to look at because it's just, are they letting guys on base, which is a lot of pitching. And that goes Peterson, Tugboat, and Ninkasi, Denholm. And Warwick Maltrude, who's on a lot of these lists, but he's been always older at the level he's pitched at, so it's hard to really take a lot from that. But I think looking at the numbers here, at least to me, it's kind of clear that Peterson has passed Messick, which is not words I thought I'd say at the beginning of the year, even as the driver of the Peterson bandwagon. His overall performance, he just continues to excel, and he hasn't hit a bump in the road. He's always missed bats. His command, he is not Shane Bieber, but we have not seen command numbers like his in the minors since Shane Bieber. So yeah, there's some fun guys. There's some players performing. It's always good to kind of check in and just see how things are going across the system. We've got some guys who were let go. We're going to say why they were let go, give these players some moments to shine on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. But first, let's go over and talk about our good friends over at Prize Picks. So I'm doing this a little bit earlier since there's no game, which means that I'm going to be pulling up some, talking about not necessarily, the performances of the day, but some cool things. Like often when I'm looking the day before, I don't get to see the demons and the goblins. Demons are a little wild. They're harder to win, but the lineup qualifies for up to 100 times the payout. And goblins are easier to win to come with lower payout multipliers. For instance, Kyle Gibson at 17.5 outs. I think you're betting the under there because I don't think you're really betting on Gibson to get you 6 innings. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't spent enough time on there where they have, hits plus runs plus RBIs. Santander at a 2.5, Judge at a 2.5. Going for Santander is facing Gosman. That's a pretty tough matchup. Fair and Judge. He's got Tyler Anderson. That's a pretty easy matchup. I'd probably bet I would do less. Oh, you have to do more. So that's what it is on all of them. It's more, more, more. So I guess they're saying Gibson you don't get the choice either of more or less. You can only pick one. So those are fun. Head to Prize Picks today. Download the app. Or you go to the website. I prefer to go to the website. That's me, though. Use the code LOCKDOWN for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to the app. Use the website for prizepicks.com. Use that promo code LOCKDOWN all lowercase, all one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Ooh, I almost did a closing of the tabs for this one there. I've got a problem, people. I want to close all of the tabs. So I got the new shelves, and up here, I'd be remiss if I didn't comment. I had a student give me this. This is a Grady Sizemore signed baseball, aka the new manager of the Chicago White Sox. It's only for this year. They want to go external. Pedro Grifol was saying everything he could to try to save his job. None of it worked. He is out. Grady Sizemore is a manager. And again, like, Cleveland has 2 of the great what ifs in baseball history. Technically 3, I believe, played with them. Because you got Herb Score, who before his injury, I believe the story is Boston offered him $1 million to buy him at the time. That's how good he was before the line drive. And then Smokey Joe Wood, after he lost, like, he was a Rick Ankiel of his day. Like, he was this phenomenal pitcher, I want to say, for Boston, who came back as a hitter. And I want to say Smokey Joe Wood then came and was a hitter, a successful hitter in Cleveland. And he was kind of that guy that back in the day, I want to say, it was like Bill James talked about the maybe like for a guy like Herb Score or Smokey Joe Wood, that they were so good for even that short period that they should be considered for the Hall of Fame because the peak was so good that peak should, I'm doing a poor job talking. And then the third great what if is Grady Sizemore, who his most common comps age-wise and before his injuries started were Barry Bonds and Duke Snider. That's some elite company. So when they're not facing Cleveland, I'll be rooting for him. Good for Grady. Though the more successful he is, the worse our chances of getting him on the show. So maybe I shouldn't root for Grady Sizemore. Cleveland has started releasing some players. Apologies there. Felt a cough coming on, so pause the recording. They've had some releases and some interesting players, some big names and not so big names, but let's give everyone their time in the sun. I will save probably the most famous player for last. I did appreciate the person on Twitter when they had a release mention of Abriel Brito and Juan Zapata, that someone was like, I saw Juan and Brito in there and I got nervous. So the common theme on these is just older players. Like, yeah, guy in their early 20s being older. This is the only time you're going to hear that. But Abriel Brito, last year he got stateside for the first time and out of complex leagues. He's, had some starts. This year he is entirely working as a reliever. He's walking more guys than he strikes out, and his walks per 9 are over 9. It's just not a great level of performance in Lynchburg. They added some college guys. So if you were a pitcher who is at that level, that immediately kind of puts you on watch. And that's why, Abriel Brito was let go. Dominican Republic, 23 years of age. Next up, also mentioned Juan Zapata. He was a good organizational soldier. You can just go look at his page. Last year, he pitched at every single level. He pitched at every single level for this team. He pitched at 2 different levels this year. He was in the upper, and good for him being in the upper minors this year. That definitely, you get paid more per the level you're at. Again, the walk rates are always too high. Didn't walk too many, didn't strike out enough, but was always that guy who was okay to move around. 6'1", right-handed pitcher out of the Dominican Republic. Big thing for Zapata is he's turning 26 in November. So by baseball standards, as a minor leaguer, that was ancient. So that's why they moved on there. Let's talk Richard Paz next. Catcher. if he is a international signed catcher, we know that means he comes from Venezuela. You don't even have to look it up. That's all they love to get their catchers from Venezuela. 23-year-old catcher, smaller guy at 5'7". Just didn't play much this year. Didn't play a ton in 2023. I believe there was health stuff, but he was almost always a backup. The bat was light. They were hoping maybe, a backup profile for Paz. He had a little bit of talk back in the day when they signed him. Wasn't the biggest name, but was a guy like I knew about. A guy that in some of the OOTP leagues, they had done enough programming of him that occasionally he became a guy I would add to my 40-man roster. But in this case, he's, another player who's 23, turned 23 in June, has not gotten above high A. So that is not a surprise. They added a bunch of catching. We knew some of the catching would be let go. Miguel Cordones from Dominican Republic, another Dominican Republic. Born one day before Jose Ramirez, 6'6" right-hander, big kid. He never left the complex leagues. And he missed a lot of bats, but his walk rate, his home run rate, his hit rate, he got lit up. And as a guy who's soon to be 25, who hadn't even made it to low A, that I don't think it was a very hard one for them. Just the development hadn't been there. Obviously a big kid, an interesting kid, but he's just been in the Dominican Summer League. And then this was his first year in the complex and was not great outside of the K rate. And then the biggest name, I think, to most people would be Javier Santos. I mean, he was a guy who was a 2022 day 2 pick. One of the 3 prep arms they took. Don't look at those prep arms. Jacob Zibbins, you had to throw a pitch. I mean, what a weird class. We think they let go Gio Rivera because they couldn't find another Giovanni Rivera in the minors. He got hurt multiple times, never threw a pitch after they gave him extra money on day 3 to sign. They paid him over slot on day 3. Jacob Zibin, never thrown a pitch. Justin Campbell, never thrown a pitch. 3 guys that they were preferred draft picks have not thrown a pitch from the 2022 class yet. Javier Santos hasn't thrown a lot of pitches. He's appeared in 18 games. Never got out of the ACL, only 11 innings this year, and that was his highest. 17 appearances for 11 innings. His data not super strong. He was kind of he was Daniel Espino knew him. He was from that same Georgia Premier Academy, so there was talk about that. He missed bats, but much like Cordones, who we talked about, a hit rate of over 10, home rate over 1, and I've never seen this. His walks per 9 were 25.5. He had 33 walks in those 11 innings. There were some health issues early on with him, but he was also, if we are being very honest, in that 2022 class, he was one of their biggest money savings. They did not take a lot of players massively under slot. And they saved a lot of little bits with Messick. But then Joe Lampe was over slot, and I think he took most of Messick's money. Furman, Lincecum, DeLuca, Santos were all under slot guys, so they could pay Jackson Humphrey $600,000, who they just haven't seen, full on yet. What he can do, he's kind of one of those guys who's in the 30 to 40 range on prospect lists. And then you got Jacob Zibin, who cost $1.2 million, cost a lot on day 3 or day 2. And yeah, Santos was a saver. It's weird to see Santos and Rivera, them cut bait so quickly on 2 of those players, high school players in that class, that they actually paid a decent amount of money to. And that's maybe even the more interesting thing too. We haven't really got the confirmation on Gio Rivera. He got $160,000 in the 19th round. Santos got $125 in the 7th. So he didn't even get as much. He was just pure money savings. And he was a good prospect, but they at $125,000 was the third lowest amount of money they gave. They gave Angel Zarte, who they also cut. Man, they've been cutting a lot of guys from this class. And $100,000. Sean Rapp got $50,000 on day 3. Yeah, this 2022 class, it's kind of rough right now. Messick and Peterson have a chance to help this team out yet. Chase DeLauder, just comes down to health. You're hoping that some of these young kids will figure it out or stay healthy. And, DeLuca's really interesting. Lincecum's got speed for days. There's a chance for this class to turn around. Right now, it's a little rough around the edges. We'll have Justin back at some point next week. I want to thank everyone who's joining us, rating, reviewing, downloading. It helps. Even when the team isn't good, I promise you fun, good content here. Thank you all for joining us. And again, take your time for yourself. If the games are getting too frustrated, listen to our show again. Listen to the good tunes, good fun. It's not tones, but thank you all, and go Guardians.